Good luck. I know the screen's a little low, but there's not very much that we can do about it right now, just because we're doing a live feed, as you probably can already tell. So there's people watching the actual presentation all around the world right now. So, secondly, we want to do, first of all, thank you very much to the Bakr Mosque and the committee for allowing us to use this beautiful space for this presentation. And inshallah, the topic today will be oil and gas in Somalia. And I'd like to present to you, inshallah, Abdullahi, who will be our presenter for the day. And at the end of the presentation, we will also have a question and answer period, in which everybody can answer questions at that point. So please try to refrain with the questions or write them down until the end of the presentation. Thank you very much. Hello, can you guys hear me? Can everyone on that side see the screen? Good?
It's okay, it's okay.
It's okay? Huh?
We're good.
And I think everyone online can hear me as well. Like Abdurrahman said, I wanted to thank the Abu Bakr Musalla for letting us use their precious time, which there was supposed to be a halaqa. I'm not sure if it's still going to happen after, but we'll see how long this takes. The other couple of people I want to thank as well is Hiran Online for hosting the live session online. We have people watching all the way around the world, Australia, Kenya, Europe. So I want to thank all the people that logged in and joined us tonight. As you can see, the topic is oil and gas in Somalia. And the group that put this together is the East African Energy Forum. So the agenda, inshallah, we'll start off with, I'm going to tell you guys what the East African Energy Forum is. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about oil exploration. And is there oil in Somalia? That's the question everyone wants to know that came here tonight. I'm going to answer that question. And then also, how are oil and Somali politics going to work? Because we don't know if Somali politics work at all by themselves. So if you add oil, we'll see what happens to that. So what's the East African Energy Forum? It's an advocacy group of professionals that are looking to sustain the resources in East Africa. And why do we exist? For public advocacy, watchdog, and to analyze the current oil and gas situation in Somalia. Who should get involved? Professionals that are interested and passionate about doing something for the country and that can offer their expertise to the group. So what areas do we work with? One is oil and gas exploration, the environment, monitoring the environment, monitoring the land use, and as well as whether the oil and gas situation in Somalia is following legal parameters. So why are we doing this? Who's going to benefit from us? The citizens of Somalia and the other East African countries. By the way, when we say East Africa, we mean Kenya, Ethiopia, and Somalia. The business community, the civil society, and also at the end, the environment. So why should I get involved? Because you have a voice and you owe it that you provide whatever expertise you have to your homeland in whichever way you can. So the goal, of course, is to bring awareness of the situation in Somalia with regards to oil and gas, educate people so they know what's going on, so that we can't be brainwashed by the media. So there's three people I really want to thank that are our partners for the East African Energy Forum. The first one is Dr. Ali Abdullahi, who's the advisor for energy and petroleum to the Prime Minister at the government in Mogadishu. And Paul Chinoba, who's the East African Program Transparency International in Germany. And last but not least, the ambassador to the UN, the Honorable Yusuf Ismail. So as you know, we've been around for about a couple of years, although we had a different name called the Somali Natural Resources Society. And we have about, right now, almost probably 300 now in 50 different countries, and the red dots are where our members are from. And how do I join? So I was plastered this around. If you look at my Facebook or LinkedIn, all you see is this oil and gas stuff. So, and I know all you guys have Facebook, so don't say I can't join. So inshallah, let's get started. It's a long presentation. Before I start, I know there's going to be some stuff that looks a little daunting if you don't know much about oil and gas. But this presentation was kind of built to send out to agencies like the UN and whatnot. But I'm going to go through it in very simple terms. So the oil and gas is located, if I get my clicker working. The oil and gas is located mainly in northern Somalia. And the two areas that have been researched the most is called the Nugad and the Darur block. So here's the Darur block in red and Nugad. And there's 7 petroleum systems, meaning 7 ways that petroleum occurs in underground Somalia. So oil has been seen in this area since the 1980s. So all this stuff you're hearing about Somali oil being discovered today was actually discovered in the 1980s. So what does Yemen and Somalia have to do with each other? If you look in this top left image, you can see, where are we? Here's Somalia, the edge right there, and here's Yemen. So right now there's the Red Sea between them, but 17 million years ago they used to be together. And in Yemen, as you know, is a large oil-producing country. So there's no reason why northern Somalia should not have the same characteristics as Yemen. All you did was separate the two. So I'm not going to go into this in detail because I don't really know what it says, but this side shows you Yemen, and this side shows you Somalia, which is the northern part. If you see the underground picture of the geology, you can see these are all similar. There's very, very small differences in the underground Somalia and Yemen. So again, that's more proof that there should be oil in Somalia. So that's how it looked before they came apart, 17 million years ago. And these are the oil-producing areas in Yemen. And you can see that it connects almost perfectly with the sides that we've seen oil in Somalia. And that's how it looks after they split apart. And this area is interesting as well because I'm going to get into the offshore oil as well. So let's look closer at these two areas that we know a lot about and that oil companies have drilled in since 1980. It's Nugad and Darur. The Darur block is northeast Somalia. The first well in this area was drilled by an Italian company called Egypt in 1958. And these two wells right here have been recently planned. The one that you've heard about in the news recently is this one that they're drilling right here, the Shabelle North well. So these two wells right now that are being drilled, this one is almost complete. It's going to be done in a couple weeks. This one right here is going to be started the month after that. Those two wells alone are expected, the Canadian company that's drilling there, are expected to get 675 million barrels of oil from just those two wells. So if you convert that to what that's worth today, that's $72.2 billion from two wells. So we're not talking about the whole oil field, just two wells. So this is how they look closely. For those of you that are familiar with geology of the geology of Puntland, this area here is mountains, and this is a very big valley. So this is the model that they used to drill the wells in Somalia, in Puntland. This is that valley you saw in the blue, and this area is where they're drilling the wells in right here, and right here. So this is a geophysical map, which is basically taking a camera and taking a picture of the underground, and you can see where they're drilling those two wells right here, right on that hill, and right on the side right here. So how do you get oil out of the ground? What does it look like? So this is just a schematic picture showing you the hill. So this is where the well would be. This is the oil that is targeting, and the gas that's trapped above it. So where's the oil? Where's the gas? How deep? To answer that question, this area right here, which is about 2,000 meters down. So the drilling in Somalia is very deep, so you have to drill almost, if you start from the bottom of the ground and go down for 2 kilometers, that's when you'll hit oil in northern Portland. And then below that, you're going to hit gas. And then you go much below that, around 3.5 kilometers underground, you'll see another oil field. So here's where we're talking about right here. So the concept in oil and gas is called drill in the hills and sweep from the valleys. So if you think of the well, this is a well, for example. If you think of the well as a vacuum, that when you start producing the well, it starts sucking up the oil. What you want to do is you want to put that well on a hill, drill it on a hill, so that once you turn on the vacuum, all the oil comes sweeping in without you having to do any extra work. So this system is noted as the best petroleum system. These are the types that Saudi Arabia has, and these are also the types that Somalia has underground. So who is the most active in Somalia today with regards to oil companies? It's Africa Oil Corp, which is the largest holder of petroleum land in Somalia right now. And they're a Canadian company. They're based in Vancouver, but they also have an office in Calgary. And as you heard in the news, they're the ones that started those 2 wells, the Shabelle 1 and Shabelle North, on January 16, and they're going to be almost done the second one by the end of next month. And Horn Petroleum, which is the Somali spin-off company, it's meant to be the Somali petroleum company that's going to take care of the activities for them, was also created in 2011. So who owns what? How many people have heard this word range resources before? How many people have seen it on the news? A couple people? This is an Australian company, and they're famous for, actually Puntland is famous for selling all the oil in Puntland to them for basically nothing. But I will talk about that later. They own 20%, and that Canadian company owns 60%. So how much oil, what does those pictures mean in numbers? 19.9 billion barrels of oil. Oil equivalent, which is oil mixed with gas, mixed with other byproducts. So if oil today costs $107 per barrel, that means $2.12 trillion in those 2 blocks is what it's worth today. So where have they drilled already? All these green dots are wells that were drilled 1980 and before. So you can see all these here, the green ones. And then this area right here is the ones that they're drilling right now, Darul. So that number I gave you, was just these 2 areas right here. That's not including any other oil that's around the area. And if I look closer, you can see they've already tried to drill a couple of offshore oil wells as well, but they didn't drill these deep enough, so they didn't bring anything out. So I don't know if I should put this title on, but I did. Shaker Moneymaker. The moneymaker is the offshore oil. So everything we talked about is on land, right? Take a well and put it in the ground as far as you can and bring the oil. What about offshore oil? This is estimated offshore, which is these gray areas, as 100 billion barrels of oil off Somalia. So this is the area, Somalia's area that territory expands around 300 kilometers. So going from here to Edmonton, going from the, say the Calgary is the edge of Somalia, they're allowed to drill outside in the Indian Ocean all the way until Edmonton. So Somalia was blessed with one of the longest coastlines in Africa, 3,000 kilometers. And potentially all around the edge of Somalia is offshore oil. So the main place that they've discovered this oil through those exploration wells is around Bandar Bela, Alula, and Bosaso, and Berbera. So which is basically this picture you see here. And like I said, 100 billion barrels of oil. And in case you guys don't know what 100 billion barrels of oil means, I'm going to show you some numbers. What about southern Somalia? These are the wells that have been drilled in Somalia, southern Somalia, and 50% of these have shown that there's oil. They haven't produced, but they show that there's oil in southern Somalia as well. So we're not only talking about northern Somalia. And yes, they did name a well Halima Ade. Just to point that out. So since 1958 was the first well that was drilled in southern Somalia. Right near Marka, which is not far from Mogadishu. How many people knew Somalia had an oil refinery?
Oh yeah. We used to work there.
You used to work in the oil refinery? Iraq and Somalia in early 80s built an oil refinery. Because they did find oil in these areas, they were planning to refine the oil so Somalis can use the oil. But not many people know about that. I didn't either. Let's go back up to Somaliland. There's no reason why we should think that the oil stops here in Puntland. This part also came from Yemen, so there should be oil in Somaliland as well. These dots you see here this is the area that they've explored for already and drilled wells, and they've seen oil in there. So let's look at closer. These are all the wells that were drilled mainly by American companies. The first well in Somaliland that was drilled is 1912, before World War I. But they didn't discover any oil. All they discovered was what the geology looks like underground. I mean, the technology back in 1912 wasn't good, so you didn't expect much more than that. This is why they didn't find anything. The wells were drilled, number one, too short. Like I said, in Puntland, the wells are going 3 kilometers deep. These ones probably didn't go much lower than 1 kilometer. So they missed the oil, which is right here. So that's the mistakes the oil companies made. This is each well, by the way, cost minimum $5 million to $30 million. So these are expensive mistakes. Who knows what an oil concession is? Have you guys heard that word before? Oil concession is basically a country dividing up its land into an oil map, and each of these blocks is going to be rented by the oil company that wants to produce oil from there. So this is what it looked like in 1991. You have all this land here, and Somaliland divided it up to only 6 or 7 different units. It's as if you have a condo building, 15 stories high, and you're only renting out the first 4 floors. So Somaliland figured this out, that this was not the right thing to do, so what they did is they put in more units. So now they have almost 24. What about gas? The CIA estimates that Somalia has 5.6 trillion cubic feet of gas. That makes them the 89th largest gas producing country in the world, behind Turkey, France, and Jordan. But that's the gas on the land. We're not talking about the gas offshore, which will be much, much more. So let's talk some cash. So those two areas, like we said, $19.9 billion. Somalia would get $2.12 trillion from just those two areas. If you add the offshore 100 billion barrels, that is $10.7 trillion. How many people know what $1 trillion is? It's $1,000 billion. So, conclusion, that's a lot of money in Somalia. So, Somalia, are they a global oil giant? So, of course, number one is Saudi Arabia, everybody knows that. Canada's number two, Iran, Iraq, all these are the usual suspects in the top 10. If we take that number, 101 billion barrels of oil in Somalia, that would make Somalia the 5th largest oil country in the world. So they would be above the United Arab Emirates. Okay, we have the 5th largest oil in the world. How are we going to get it to the marketplace? Like I said, Somalia is blessed with the longest coastline. They're not landlocked. They don't have to go put oil on the roads and take it somewhere. And that one refinery that I'm talking about was near Mogadishu. So Somalia needs to build a pipeline network. From wherever they produce the oil, they need to connect the whole country through pipes and send them out to where? Somalia's major ports, which are Ismail, here, Merka, Barawe, Mogadishu, Bosaso, Ras Hafun. How many people have heard that word before? That city. Who knows Ras Hafun? I didn't know it existed, but anyway. And Berbera. And I think the best ports to take it to would be Bosaso and Hafun. So, is Somalia going to use this oil or are they going to sell it? Well, in 2005, Somalia used only 6,000 barrels per day. If you compare that to the US, I don't know the exact numbers, but I think the US imports close to 3 million barrels a day. So, for 8.3 million people that only consume 6,000 barrels a day, Somalia would likely sell all of its oil, meaning they wouldn't use much inside Somalia, and they would sell all that. So that number, 10.7 trillion that I showed you, would go straight into the government bank accounts. So where are we going to take this oil? The most likely is India and Pakistan, which is the ones that obviously have the largest populations and need it the most. It's actually also the shortest route. China, these days you find a bunch of Chinese people walking around Puntland. That's the reason why they're not there for tourism. Australia and South Africa. Okay, so we have all this oil. What are we going to do with it? How are we going to regulate it? Where are the laws? Who gets what? Can I just come with my shovel and start digging 3 kilometers below my house?
Possible. Yeah.
No.
Possible in Somalia.
Somebody owns this oil. So first of all, there's no such thing as a Somali oil industry. There's no infrastructure, there's no history of it. Somalia has never produced oil before. So that means Somalia doesn't have many oil laws or any legal system to govern oil. So that means anyone can come and start making their law. Puntland made their own law, Somalia made their own law, Mogadishu made their own law. So what should we do? First things first, we need an energy conservation agency. What that does is their sole purpose is to protect the natural resource. So any foreign company that comes into Somalia to drill, they have to go through these guys which is, you could call them the oil police, making sure that the contracts are good, that Somalia is not on the losing end, and that the environment is not being ruined. So, the federal and regional ministries responsible for the environment should be able to block any oil deals that ruin the environment. So how is the government going to benefit from this oil? It's going to cost a lot of money for these oil companies to come from Canada, wherever they're from, and drill in Somalia. Number one, their biggest cost will be, other than the drilling, will be security. If you're drilling near someone's land, I mean, what's stopping him coming with an AK-47 going after the oil companies? So they have to pay for security. They need to do two things. Before they discover oil, Somalia is entitled to signing bonus, which is basically the amount of cash for you letting them stay in Somalia. They need to get their rent, and every oil company that drills in Somalia has to benefit the place they're drilling. So if they're drilling in Calgary, for example, then you would have to benefit Calgary. So if you're drilling near Bosaso, you have to invest in Bosaso. And after they discover petroleum, there's something called a royalty. How many people have heard that word before? A royalty is when someone's using your land for whatever, they pay you, it's sort of a rent. They pay you for the right to be on your land. You gave them permission and they pay you monthly. And corporate taxes. I know the word Somali and taxes don't go together usually, but they need to. So will the Somali people benefit? We know the government will. So first of all, if I'm drilling near Bosaso, I need to get my trucks and my oil equipment to where I'm drilling. So I need to build roads. I need to house the thousands of people that it takes to drill a well. For one well it takes nearly close to 1,100 people to drill one well. Where are those 1,100 people going to stay? So yes, I think Somali people will benefit from the oil. Number one is their small population. And the biggest benefiters are the ones nearest where the wells are being drilled. So, and like I said, you need a lot of people to drill a well in Somalia, in anywhere. And I'll give you this example. How many people know where Armo is? Has anybody heard of Armo, Somalia? Where the police academy is? So this is the nearest town to where they're drilling the wells right now. And since they started drilling in January, the value of the Somali shilling in Armo went up 1.5%. So without even having produced any oil, they've already benefited the currency. And the companies drilling in Somalia, in Armo, they need to accommodate their workers. So they began building hotels and apartment complexes. So who's going to work in those apartment complexes and hotels? The local Somalis. And the previous young Somali men who didn't have anything to do but carry their gun around and join militias and cause trouble, the oil companies have enlisted them and trained them, or put them in training to work in the oil rigs. So we've already seen benefits for the Somali people. So how will the government manage the industry? Are they going to make their own oil company? Are they going to share it with the foreign oil companies? Are they going to make a state company? Somalia owns everything. How is it going to work? And I've divided how to manage the oil and gas of Somalia into three portions. Number one is the Somali Ministry of Energy. They determine the energy policy. What oil companies can come into Somalia, how long they can stay, what they have to do, how much they have to pay. That's the Somali Ministry of Energy's responsibility. The Energy Conservation Agency is in charge of regulating that. Did this oil company break any environmental laws in Somalia? Do they have to pay a fine? and the national oil company will search for oil in Somalia. And then civil society has a role as well. So groups like the East African Energy Forum, other lobby groups, they need to watch what's happening in Somalia. So do we have oil and oil law? I didn't think we did, but yes we do. And this is what it looks like. Here's the Constitution of Somalia. Here's the petroleum law that was passed in 2007. And then the ministry is in charge of making the smaller rules, and then the contracts with the foreign companies. So I want you guys to look at this closely. This is the oil law that was signed in 2007. This gives the Somali government 58% ownership over oil in Somalia. 49% will be owned by the foreign companies that come to Somalia. So according to me, this number needs to be much higher. Again, if we compare with some other countries, you can see Libya gets 91% of their oil. So that, if they had that $10.7 trillion, they'd get 91% of that money. And Somalia right here, which has more oil estimated than Yemen, Oman, Syria, Algeria, Indonesia, will only get 69% under Somali oil law.
58 or 60?
Only 69%. Yemen gets 72%, Oman gets 80%, Syria gets 77%, Algeria gets 85%. What do these countries have in common? They're not rich countries. And the reason why they have a lot of oil, they're not rich. The reason why is because of that. These values here. Most of the oil is going to the oil companies. So, okay, we all know Somali politics is complicated. The term Somalia is different depending on whoever you ask. There's Galmudug, there's Puntland, there's Somaliland, there's TFG, there's a bunch of groups. So who gets the oil then? Under the Somali oil law of 2007, the TFG in Mogadishu is entitled to 50% of the oil going straight to their bank accounts. So if you find oil in Puntland, if you find oil in Galkayo, if you find oil in Kismayo, 50% of that automatically under law goes to the TFG. And the other 50% will be for the regional governments. And the TFG has to pass any petroleum contract signed with a foreign oil company. Okay, can you guys read this at the bottom? My question is, what is wrong with this contract? This contract was signed in 2005 by that company I was saying, Range Resources from Australia. And it was signed in 2005 with Puntland. I think his name is Adil Musin. His government signed this contract. And the part I want you to focus on is this contract gives this company all the oil rights in Puntland. So all of Puntland, that $1.2 trillion in Puntland that was discovered already, would belong to this company right here who barely has 50 employees. How was this contract signed? So did we hear that right? They get all the oil rights in Puntland. So that makes Puntland the only government, regional or federal in the world, to sell all their mineral rights to one company. If you go around in Calgary downtown, you see how many oil companies there are. There's not only Shell or BP or Petro-Canada. There's a bunch of them because the government sells their oil to different companies. But in Puntland, there would be only one company allowed to drill in the oil. Not only that, the way oil is sold in the oil and gas industry is you don't sell the surface land, you sell what's below it. So if this area is where I think my oil is, and I'm the oil company, I have to go to Somalia, the Somali government, and rent this level of the ground from them. The next oil company is going to come after me and says, I think oil is here. They're going to rent that land. and another one's going to do that, and another one's going to do that. And all these people are paying rent, which is in the billions of dollars, to the government. That's the correct way to rent out the oil, the land to explore for oil in Somalia. So that contract, I consider a blatant act of corruption and failure to protect the Somali national interest on the part of the Puntland government in 2005. So if we own the land, then we have to act like it. Alberta does. This is the government from the Government Alberta website. If you have a plot of land, say this is your backyard that has oil, you're going to sell this plot of land to one oil company. And you're going to let them only search for oil. Meaning if they find gas, they can't touch it unless they pay more. Then you're gonna sell this, and you say you can search for oil and gas. Whatever you find, you can start producing from there. But don't touch this gas because another company is renting it. So if you have all this land, you rent out to as many people as you can, so that you get as much money as you can from it. It's a very simple concept. So in that contract, we sold oil for pennies, essentially. The company was inexperienced. They're actually a mining company. They're not an oil company. They became an oil company once they signed this contract, which is really, really beyond me. There was no royalty, meaning they don't pay any rent. This company was not expected to pay any rent. They gave a bonus, a small one too. When I'm talking about a bonus that the governments have to pay, when I sign a contract with you, as the government of Somalia, to Petro-Canada or Shell or whatever, you will give me a bonus, which is in the billions of dollars. So they gave the Puntland government a very modest bonus. What they did is they went to specific people who were signing the contract. You could say the top leaders of Puntland. I'm not going to name their names, mainly because I don't know them, but they got minimal money, in the millions. Maybe $2 million per person. So what about Somalia's coast? I said Somalia has the largest coast in Africa, 3,000 kilometers. So are we protecting our coast? Can you guys see this picture right here? This is a picture of Kenya and the way Kenya divided their oil and gas fields. If you look here, you can see that Kenya is producing oil off of Somalia's coast, with or without the knowledge of the government. So how far can I drill? If I live right here, how far is Somalia out in the water? Under United Nations law, this picture, say this is where the land is. Somalia is entitled to 200 nautical miles, which is about almost 400 kilometers. So going from Calgary to Edmonton is still part of Somalia in the Indian Ocean. Outside of that, anyone in the world can use it. And this is definitely less than 400 kilometers outside. So in a secret agreement, in case any people didn't hear this in the news, in 2009, Prime Minister Omar Sharbake and Kenya signed an agreement, a secret agreement, to give Somalia's continental shelf. So this whole area, near the Kenyan area, basically from here down here, for free. So Somalia was sold a portion of it, at least for free, to Kenya. But the deal was rejected a few months later by the parliament in Mogadishu, only after the public were enraged by this. And now in oil law, the TFG declared that if any country tries to do what Kenya did again, that it's considered an act of war. So Somalia has the right to drill offshore anywhere from here to 400 kilometers outside. It belongs to Somalia. And this has been a Somali law since 1972. So Kenya, NATO, anti-piracy, and the EU are all trying to make this 400 kilometers that Somalia owns smaller. To what? to 12 nautical miles, which is about 40 kilometers. So they're negotiating with the government, or they're trying to pressure the government to let go of all of this ownership that Somalia has to only 30 kilometers. Why? Because Kenya wants to drill offshore. Kenya knows there's oil here, and they want to drill there. But they can't because it belongs to Somalia. Why does NATO want to do that? NATO wants to protect their shipping lanes. They don't want to go 400 kilometers outside around when they're traveling their oil tankers to the US or Europe. They want to cut through that. And the other reason, why does the EU want to make Somalia's territory less? Because they're of illegal fishing and toxic dumping. If they make Somalia's coast less than 30 kilometers, that means all the toxic oil, toxic waste, and all the illegal fishing that's going on right now off Somalia becomes illegal because that's open waters. So you can say the two companies that are drilling illegally in Somalia right now is the Swiss oil company and a US oil company. So this is all concerning news. What can we do? Then we have a partnership with a group called Transparency International that we're going to encourage the governments to, first of all, post online all their oil agreements, how much money they're making, where the money is going, which bank accounts, which governments are getting it. Same thing with the oil companies in Somalia. They have to post on their websites or provide it to the Somali public how much they're making off Somali oil. And with this group as well, we're working with them right now to get TFG and Puntland to sign this agreement. So we're going to have another session similar to this, more of a discussion slash conference with the Global Policy Forum, which is, if you visit, I encourage you guys to visit the website because they're a group of think tanks in New York that are very pro-Somali, and most of this information was provided by them. So the topic is called Somalia, a resource curse. It's going to be in New York, inshallah. So conclusions. Somalia will see dramatic change to its economy if we start looking for the oil, start producing the oil. So I'm not in agreement with people who say leave the oil in the ground until we get a government, which is God knows when. This is an opportunity for the country's various factions to reconcile. In the area that they're drilling right now, if you guys are familiar with it, there's sort of tensions between Puntland government, militias that are loyal to a guy named Sheikh Atta in Galgala Mountains. There's a lot of fighting going on in the area. As soon as the oil companies moved in and tried to negotiate how they're going to produce the oil, they came up with a way to stop the fighting. And the way I think Somalis can stop fighting is if we start talking money. So if we start dividing up this economics somehow, giving people shares of money from whatever the activities is, that would entice them to stop the fighting. Because if they continue the fighting, the oil companies can't pay them that money. So it's a good way to stop fighting. And last but not least, civil societies, which is anyone who's a citizen of Somalia or concerned citizen of Somalia, has to watch these things. It's not a matter of watching, going online and on Iran or something and seeing that they're drilling for oil and you clap for them. You have to realize and you have to research what they're doing there because it's our country as well. So I want to thank these people who I've used in this presentation. Paula Chinova from Transparency. That was a halftime show. I want to thank, I took most of these images from Africa Oil Forum Petroleum and Grain, which are the 3 oil companies in Somalia.
Come here.
This guy named Jay Park, who's the one who wrote the National Oil Law, he's from Calgary. And the TFG Puntland and Somaliland Government Energy Ministry. So last but not least, the future of Somali oil is bright, and only if we protect it together. Thank you. Now, I'm going to open the floor for questions and answers. We do have a lot of people listening online around the world right now, and I think Abdurrahman's going to see if they're going to type their questions. But does anybody here have questions from any of the stuff we talked about? Yeah. The question is, I showed you guys that Kenya is illegally trying to search for oil off Kismayo. I'm not good with politics, but you can see reasons why Kenya is so interested in. That's why their army is in Somalia right now. So all of this is tied together. The question was, since the parliament of Somalia said that it's illegal and Kenya can't go into that area, are they still doing it? Of course. The answer is of course. Because A, TFG has no power to enforce their laws. I mean, I can write a law on the wall, but if I don't have the power to enforce it, a little kid can break the law, and I can't do anything about it. So that's the sad situation that Somalia is in right now. They don't have a coast guard. They don't have anyone monitoring that. So yes, Kenya is currently stealing Somalia's oil. Any other questions? Sorry, which one was that?
Rangers.
Okay. That contract that I showed you that they sold, Puntland sold everything to them? Yes, that was cancelled by the TFG. It was allowed to happen through Puntland. The parliament passed it in Puntland, but TFG cancelled it as they're the only representatives that the world deals with for law all over Somalia, Puntland, Somaliland, Yambu, all that area. TFG under UN law is the one that decides that. So the parliament in Mogadishu is the one that cancelled that contract. So no, that contract is not happening. We'll take one question from the online viewers.
Hassan from the UK asks, what can we as a Somali community do to stop this?
Okay, so Hassan from the UK is asking, what can we as a Somali community do to stop this? Number one is holding events like this, educating people about what the current situation is. Because if we just are happy that there's oil in Somalia, we can turn into a situation, and if I give an example of Nigeria, it's a perfect example of how oil can be a curse for a country. There's many people in Nigeria that wish that they didn't have oil. Why? Because when they first discovered oil there, and all the oil companies came in, signed deals that are not in the interest of the people, and that creates corruption. So right now what you have is Nigeria, which is the 8th largest producer in the world, but people still living in huts, which shouldn't happen whatsoever. So Somalia has to be careful in not letting that happen again. And the only way that can not happen is if the general public is always aware of what's happening in Somalia. What's the contracts? That's what the two groups that I showed you, the East African Energy Forum and Transparency, forcing the government to post all the contracts online so Somalis can see that something like that contract from Australia doesn't happen again. Any questions here? Yeah.
So you said that 10 point something plus $1 trillion goes to the government like that, and the consumption only 6,000 something. So what's the percentage of the development the government spend for the development, like the education for the country? What's the percentage, like the literacy percentage?
For education and stuff?
Everything like development for
That- The question is, the government is getting, like I said, around $10.7 trillion if we explore most of the oil in Somalia. What percentage are they going to be spending on education and any other thing? Okay. That's for the government to decide. And the only way they're going to spend that money on the Somali people is if we're monitoring it, right? If I'm making money from somewhere and nobody asks me for it, it's going straight to my bank account. So we have to disclose how much money Somalia is making and make these kind of presentations around the world so people know what their country's worth. And a few people in the government can't tell you, $10.7 trillion. There's no reason that Somalia shouldn't be a first world country. Yeah.
I wonder the oil quality from one country to other country is different. For example, oil from Saudi Arabia, oil from Texas, it's really different quality. So how is Somali oil different than from those countries?
The question is
quality, yeah.
The question is the quality of oil in Somalia. He's right that there is different qualities of oil. Just like there's different quality of water and every other resource. Probably the best quality oil in the world is Saudi Arabia. It's the easiest to drill, and that's the reason why they're the #1 producers. Texas as well. Somalia's quality, well, we don't know that yet until we start drilling a lot of wells and compare with other countries. So once we start drilling a lot of wells and producing oil, we can see the quality. But what we can say that Somalia has good quality in is the substructure. How the underground looks in Somalia is similar to that of Yemen and Saudi Arabia in the Middle East. Because like I said, they used to all be one connected area. So the area where we would drill, for example, if this is a hill and we put a well there, all the oil is here. Very easy for that oil to come and into the well and produce. So the quality of the underground of Somalia is good. We don't know how the quality is until we start producing the oil.
Are the BOE reserves in the presentation proven or?
Okay, so Irfan from Calgary is asking, all the billion barrels of oil that I'm showing you, is that proven reserves or estimated? So they're not proven reserves. Proven reserves are, what's proven is the on land. So that Nugala and Darur basin that I showed you, that's worth 1.7 trillion, that's proven. So that's 1.7 trillion for sure. The $10 trillion of offshore oil is estimated. So oil companies have the capability to estimate based on extending what a geology looks like underground. I mean, if the geology says there's oil on land, usually there's oil offshore as well. Because we're not talking about long distances. We're talking about Calgary to Edmonton. You don't expect much difference in under the ground, right? Compared to Calgary and Toronto, for example. So those are estimated reserves.
That's a good question. That question is good. Answer that.
Does anyone have a
That
question?
question.
I can read it here. Okay. Are the rent security costs paid by the oil companies deducted from the money they make or the Somali share? That's from Ibrahim from Minnesota. The rent and the security cost, all that is paid by the oil companies. Like I said, we own the land and we have to start acting like it. If nobody's forcing the oil companies to come and produce, to come into Somalia and search for oil. Because if they don't do it, another company is going to come and do it in their place. So as Somalis, we have to, I'd say, be prouder of our current position and what we have, this oil we have, and be demanding of it. So no, Somali government has no need to pay for any of that cost. The government, the oil company pays for it, and it doesn't deduct from any of the government's money. The Somalis have the knowledge and equipment to start digging. And how can we start preparing the future? That's from Hassan from UK. One of the oil companies' CEO went to Bosaso and was talking to government officials and just the general public, telling them how he's going to produce oil in Puntland. And he said that we're going to do all the work, technical work, you do all the labor work. Why? Because he said Somalis don't have the knowledge or the capability to obtain the knowledge. So it was a direct insult. If you ask me, someone coming into your house telling you that you don't know how to clean your house, so I'm going to do it for you. So it's up to Somalis. If they want, this is the oil that we have here, and we're going to have it for a long time. Somalis, if they want to go in oil and gas, they have the power in their hands. If we don't have any knowledgeable people in oil and gas, you're going to have oil companies telling you what to do. That's how it's going to end up.
I have a comment, not question. My comment is we need to advocate, as you, Watchdog Group, or anyone else, we need to advocate the companies that are drilling oil in Somalia must hire Somalis first, Somali professionals all over the world. For example, this company is from Calgary, and we have tons of engineers working in the oil company right here, and they're telling us we don't have professionals and somebody who's capable to learn. We should mandate and advocate for that. That's what I was.
Those Somali engineers or geologists or anyone who has knowledge in the area are the ones that have to step up and start researching this, monitoring this. But the question from, or the comment from the Sheikh is that they have to train and use Somali labor and Somali knowledge in Somalia, which Africa Oil Corp, which their office is in downtown Calgary, they're doing that. That's what that's the example I gave you in Armo, where they employing close to 600 young Somali men, training them on how to use the rig in skilled labor. Yes.
Like say?
Yes. So Somali young men are training. They recruit them from the militias in Puntland and tell them that we'll pay you whatever, 3 times as much as you're getting for killing people. And we might give you a truck too, something like that. So Africa Oil Corp is actually doing a good job with that. And they have to, because if they don't have the people, Somalis are not going to protest with banners, they're going to protest with AK-47. So you don't have a choice. Okay, since there is no federal government to speak of, at least for now, you guys engaging regional entities, since they are the ones in control. Are you guys engaging regional entities? Yeah. He's asking, since the government of Somalia doesn't control technically more than Mogadishu, do we have to deal with Puntland, Somaliland, Galmudug? Do they have the right to sign agreements and drill? Yes. It's the same thing in Canada. Alberta can sign an oil agreement with whoever they want because that's where the oil is. Ottawa can't tell them what to do, but Ottawa has to approve it. So that's what we want to build in Somalia, is all decisions coming from one area so that nobody's doing secret deals like the one Puntland did in 2005. Yeah, this presentation is going to be posted on YouTube.
Could it be that even that one Puntland sign that they didn't know better, instead of just blaming them that they quote unquote corrupted? So maybe that's what they trying to do is what they have.
The question is, did Puntland or the Puntland government that signed the contract and sold all of Puntland oil to one company for free, did they know better? Yes. Nobody can stand here. If you went and sold your house for $0 and you say, I don't know anything, that doesn't make an excuse whatsoever. So they knew exactly what they were doing, and like I said, it's just pure corruption. But it's not a whole group of people. What it is, it's a few people that have power to do that, right? And most of those people are not in government anymore, anyways. Okay, Irfan will have lunch soon. Yeah.
Yeah, from your own knowledge and from your presentation, we see that oil in Somalia has been discovered, I believe, more than 30 years ago. What exactly was happening since they discovered?
What has happened since they discovered?
I mean, what was happening? I mean,
Since 80s.
Oh, since 1980s. Okay, yeah. Like I said, actually the first wells in Somalia were drilled before World War I.
At that time, there was government, I believe.
In 1980s, there was government, yes. From 1980 to 1988, there was nearly 14 oil companies in Somalia drilling. 14 different oil companies, majority of them from America. All those oil companies, what happens is they invested all this money in. Each well cost $5 million. They drilled hundreds of wells. And then, of course, the war broke out. So those companies, if they want, they can come back today and say, I want my land back that I paid X amount of dollars in 1984 under international law, because they were forced out by war. So all those oil companies that own lands in Puntland, Somalia, in that area, they have the right to come back and claim their land. Yeah. Yes.
Yes, my concern is with the ongoing conflict. What guarantee is there that this will not further divide the country and bring more chaos?
The question is, with the ongoing conflict that's fighting happening in Somalia, is there any guarantees that this is not going to make it any worse? No, there's no guarantees, right? If two people are fighting and then you bring money into the picture, you would expect the fight to go into round 2. So that's something left for people who have political knowledge, and that's something that we have to be careful with in Somalia, because they can easily inflame the situation. They call it the curse of oil for a reason. Yeah. We're going to take a couple more questions and we'll finish.
waxaad sheegtay dhaqaalo badan baad noo sheegtay haddii ilaahay idmo laga helay meesha maxaad malaynaysaa dadka soomaalida oo muslimka inay diinta wax u dhimayso fidno inay keeni fiin karto dhaqaalahaas inay fidno keeni karto.
Okay, the question was, will there be fitna from this money? Did I answer that?
People fighting each other.
Yeah, it's the same question as the last one, similar almost. Like I said, you don't know until you bring the pie in front of the people. So that's something you have to wait and see. But like I said, in Puntland, when the area they started drilling around was areas where different tribes were fighting. But they stopped the fighting because the oil brought them together. Actually, the money brought them together, because each got their share. And they continued to get their share as long as they leave the area peaceful. So oil can either make more fighting or stop the fighting.
Just one question.
Can you send this presentation to the Somali government so they can change the weak laws? I can do that, but they'll probably throw my email in the trash. So I don't have any power, but we do talk to people in the Somali government, specifically in Puntland. They're politicians, so. Any other questions? Last question? I think we'll close it there. We're already way past our time. I want to thank people who are listening online. It's probably the next morning in Australia where some of our viewers are. The video, this recorded lecture is going to be posted online on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on YouTube, so you'll be able to find it. And I want to thank everybody here in Calgary that came out to the talk. And inshallah, we'll have much more discussions about this in the near future. Jazakallah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Can you take the other from you?
Yeah.